What you're looking at right now used to sprint, not waddle, not lunge 2 feet from the riverbank. Sprint on long legs, upright like a dog, chasing prey across open, dry land at full speed. And we have the fossils to prove it. This is one of the most overlooked stories in prehistoric science because everyone just assumes the crocodile has always been this slow, swampy ambush machine that hasn't changed in millions of years. But that's not the whole story. That's actually just the ending. The beginning is way stranger. And the reason we ended up with the version you're looking at now instead of a sprinting land predator comes down to one of the most catastrophic events in the history of this planet. So what happened? Why does the croc look like this today instead of that? And just how weird did the crocodile family tree actually get before everything went wrong? Turns out the answer is weirder than the question. Meet Galahadosuchus jonesi. And yes, I know, that name sounds like a spell from Hogwarts, but stay with me. This was a real animal that lived about 215 million years ago during the late Triassic period in what is now southwest Britain. The fossil was pulled from Cromhall Quarry in Gloucestershire, a site that turns out to be one of the best windows we have into Triassic life in this part of the world. Scientists formally described and named this species in 2026, and the name itself is actually kind of great. The genus name is a nod to Sir Galahad, the knight famous for being upright, which is a deliberate pun on the animal's upright posture. And the species name, Jonesy, honours David Rhys-Jones, a physics teacher in Wales who inspired the lead scientist to pursue paleontology in the first place. So this animal is literally named after a teacher who changed someone's life. That's genuinely cool. And what they found in those bones was not what anyone expected to find on the crocodile family tree. This animal was small, probably under 5 feet long from nose to tail. Lightweight skull, narrow body. But the part that makes scientists actually excited, the legs. Unlike any crocodile alive today, this animal had long legs, and they weren't sprawled out to the sides the way a modern croc's legs are. They were positioned directly underneath its body, upright, like a dog or a wolf, with a whole skeletal structure designed to move it forward efficiently. When researchers analysed the hip joints, the ankle bones, and the wrist structure, they found what's called a cursorial build, meaning this animal was anatomically optimised to run. Its forelimbs were nearly the same length as its hind limbs. Its wrist bones were elongated and compact, stiffening the foreleg for powerful, efficient strides. Even its ankle design, a classic crocodile relative feature called a crurotarsal joint, was set up to give it a springy, stable gait for quick cuts and sudden bursts of speed on uneven ground. This was not an ambush animal. Every bone in its legs was built for forward drive, not for sitting still in a swamp. It was the sprint and chase type. To really appreciate how strange this is, you have to understand what Britain looked like 215 million years ago, because it was nothing like today. No London, no rainy afternoons, no roundabouts. What existed was a warmer, patchier landscape, broken up by rift basins, stretches of exposed dry ground, seasonal floodplains that came and went, and scattered vegetation across irregular terrain. Big permanent swamps weren't really a thing. The environment kept shifting, and in that kind of environment, slow and heavy was a terrible strategy. The prey that Galahadosuchus was hunting, tiny early mammals, small lizard-like reptiles, little amphibians, these things were quick. They could dart into crevices, squeeze under rocks, and disappear into brush in an instant. If you were a predator and you weren't fast, you weren't eating. So the environment built the animal. Dry, open, patchy terrain created relentless pressure on predators to get faster and more agile. And the crocodile family tree responded by producing something that looked and moved far more like a dog than anything we'd recognize as a croc today. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because this doesn't just tell us about one weird ancient animal, it tells us something much bigger about how evolution works. And it all comes back to a concept called convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is when two animals that aren't closely related at all end up evolving almost the same body plan, because they're dealing with the same kinds of challenges. We've talked about this on the channel before. Sharks and dolphins both ended up with torpedo-shaped bodies, despite one being a fish and the other being a mammal. It's not copying. It's just that the physics of a problem only have a limited number of good answers, and nature keeps rediscovering the same ones. Galahadosuchus is one of the purest examples of this effect you'll ever find. Greyhounds, cheetahs, pronghorn antelope, all of these animals ended up with long legs positioned under the body, lightweight frames and compact, stiffened limbs because that is what fast pursuit hunting on land demands. And this ancient crocodile relative from a completely separate branch of the animal kingdom landed on basically the same exact design, independently. It's like if you asked 100 engineers who had never met each other to design the world's fastest land vehicle, and they all independently came up with 4 wheels, a low center of gravity, and a streamlined body. The challenge drives you to the same answer every time. And here's the thing. This running body plan wasn't just a weird experiment that one obscure species tried. The crocodile family tree produced multiple versions of it. Paleontologists have found other early crocodilomorphs from the Triassic with similarly upright postures and limb proportions, built for moving fast on land. This design kept showing up because it kept working, in the same way the crab shape keeps showing up across completely unrelated crustaceans because the environment kept selecting for it. But then things went very, very wrong. About 201 million years ago, just 14 million years or so after Galahadosuchus was out there sprinting around prehistoric Britain, planet Earth had one of the worst days in its entire history. Massive volcanic eruptions tore open as the supercontinent Pangaea began to split apart. The scale of these eruptions is almost impossible to picture. Lava poured across millions of square miles. Toxic gases flooded the atmosphere. Global temperatures swung violently, and what followed was the end Triassic mass extinction, an event that wiped out somewhere around 75% of all species on Earth. Just gone. And the crocodile family tree got hit hard. The land-running sprinters, the specialized dry terrain hunters, many of the experimentally diverse forms that had been spreading across the landscape. Most of them didn't make it through. What survived? Largely the animals that were already living in and around water. And here's why that mattered. Water is a massive thermal buffer. When the atmosphere was swinging between extremes, temperatures spiking and crashing as volcanic gases wrecked the climate, the water stayed relatively stable. The land dwellers were fully exposed to every swing. The water dwellers had somewhere to hide from it. And the animals built for those environments, the semi-aquatic, low-to-the-ground, water-edge ambush hunters. Those were the ones that kept going. Those are the ones that eventually became every crocodile, alligator, and gharial alive today. Now, to be fair to the modern crocodile, because this animal absolutely deserves credit, the design that survived is genuinely incredible. Once you evolve with the ability to float motionless with just your eyes and nostrils above the waterline, to launch out of the water faster than prey can react, to hold your breath and stay completely still for extended stretches, you've built one of the most effective ambush systems in the history of life on Earth. Modern crocodiles have eyes and nostrils positioned high on the skull, specifically so they can breathe and see while almost completely submerged. They have a secondary palate that lets them open their mouth underwater without drowning. A massive, powerful tail built for explosive propulsion. And legs that, while not designed for long-distance running, can still carry them in a surprisingly quick burst on land when they need to. It's a compromised body. It's not the world's fastest runner, and it's not a deep water swimmer. But in the shallow water ambush niche it was built for, this body plan has been so successful that it's remained the dominant design for nearly 80 million years. Nothing has come along and replaced it. That's a pretty good track record. And here's something most people don't realize. Scientists actually push back on the living fossil label because while the outside barely changed, the inside kept upgrading, including what's considered the most complex heart of any animal alive. They didn't stop evolving. They just found a shape so perfect they stopped needing to change it. But here's the part that really gets me. Because the running crocodile and the modern swamp ambusher, those are just 2 points on what was actually a wildly, almost absurdly diverse evolutionary map. Because in between the Triassic and today, the crocodile family tree tried basically everything. Some ancient croc relatives went fully marine. Not semi-aquatic, fully marine. Imagine a crocodile with flippers instead of feet and a tail fin like a shark's. It sounds like a B-movie monster, but 150 million years ago that was just Tuesday in the ocean. Convergent evolution had pushed them toward the same streamlined swimmer design as dolphins and early marine reptiles. Not because they were related, but because the ocean kept handing out the same blueprint to anyone who showed up. Other ancient croc relatives stayed on land but got big and powerful and competed directly with some of the early predators of the Cretaceous. There's fossil evidence of crocodilomorph species that evolved unusual feeding strategies, some potentially filtering small prey out of water like a whale, and others possibly eating plants, which, if you've ever seen a saltwater crocodile, is genuinely hard to picture. The point is, the crocodile family wasn't always this one single specialized thing lurking in rivers. It was once a wildly diverse group of animals that had figured out how to fill nearly every ecological role on the planet. Fast land runner, open ocean swimmer, ambush predator, terrestrial hunter, and more. The version we have today isn't the whole story, it's what was left after the world hit the reset button. And this is where the greyhound crocodile story stops being just about a cool prehistoric animal and starts being about something much bigger. That living fossil label doesn't just undersell the modern croc's hidden complexity, it undersells the entire history of the family. The modern crocodile isn't a creature that sat still while everything around it changed. It's the survivor of a group that was once spectacularly diverse and got filtered down to one successful design by one of the worst catastrophes in the planet's history. All those other versions, the sprinters, the marine swimmers, the terrestrial hunters, they were real, they existed. They worked until they didn't. What made the swamp ambusher the last one standing wasn't that it was the best design in some absolute sense. It was that it happened to fit the specific ecosystems that recovered after the extinction. That's it. If the end Triassic extinction had played out differently, if a slightly different set of habitats had survived, we might be living in a world where crocodile relatives are still sprinting across open plains on long legs, competing with wolves and big cats for the same prey. We might have grown up knowing the crocodile as a fast cursorial land predator rather than a slow river ambusher. Instead, one catastrophic volcanic event reshuffled the entire deck, and the hand the crocodile family got dealt was a life in the water. Galahadosuchus lived, ran, hunted, and apparently had a very successful run, no pun intended, for millions of years before the extinction reset everything. And the fact that its bones ended up in a limestone fissure at Cromhall Quarry, got preserved for 215 million years, got found by paleontologists, and got pieced together into a story about a sprinting crocodile. That's genuinely remarkable, because this animal is a reminder that the creatures we see today aren't the final answer to evolution's questions. They're just the current answer, the snapshot we happen to arrive at, shaped by catastrophes and environments and pressures that had nothing to do with which design was best. Somewhere in the crocodile's family tree, there was a version of it built to run down prey in the open. It had long legs, a narrow body, and apparently had no interest whatsoever in sitting around in a swamp waiting. And all it took to turn that animal into the slow river lurker we know today was 15 million years and one very, very bad volcanic event. As always, thanks for watching Deep Blue Marble. If you want to see more about the wildest evolutionary stories, check out this video right here.